Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel again. If this is your first time here, please kindly subscribe to this channel, and please don't forget to hit the notification button so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. This is a statistics course that I'm teaching. In my previous video I did an introduction, so the topic of the course is Introduction to Probability and Statistics. And I know that in that previous video I said that we are going to cover three main topics. The first one is that we are going to cover counting methods. The second is that we are going to cover Introduction to Probability, and the third is that we are going to cover Introduction to Statistics. So if you've not watched that video, please go back to my previous video and watch the introduction to the whole course. So this video is going to be on counting methods, right? So remember I said that in my previous video that we're going to do counting methods. And under counting methods, we have 5 different subtitles under it. So the first one is that we are going to count using systematic listing, okay? Counting by systematic listing. The second part is going to be using the fundamental counting principle, okay? The fundamental counting principle. Third is using permutations and combinations. Permutations and combinations. And again, guys, don't get freaked out about the names and all that stuff. I'm going to explain them thoroughly in other videos coming up. So don't get scared, don't be panicky, right? That's one thing that you don't want to do in this class. Not, I mean, in my class, but in all other statistical classes that you take or math classes. When you hear a word, don't get panicked, right? Again, that's why I said, if you have any questions for me, please put them in the comment sections and I'll do my best to reply to all of them, okay? So third is permutation and combination. Fourth is using the Pascal's triangle, okay? Pascal's triangle. And the last one is counting problems involving not and or. So this is the main topics that we are going to cover under counting methods. Okay, so I'm going to start by covering counting by systematic listing. Under counting by systematic listing, I'm gonna first of all explain to you what, I've been talking about counting methods, right? I'm first of all gonna explain to you what counting is by definition, and then I'm gonna start teaching you techniques, right, as to how to do counting method questions, okay? So counting, right? What is counting? Counting is finding the number of objects of some certain type that exist, okay? So it's finding the number of objects of certain type that exist. Or another way of saying this is, another definition for counting is listing all the possible outcomes for a given task, okay? Listing all the possible outcome for a given task. That's what counting is all about. We are going to find ways to list all the possible outcome for a given task. And then it said, when listing, it is extremely important to use a systematic approach so that no possibilities are missed. Okay, so when you're listing, you don't just randomly list. You want to use a systematic approach of doing things, okay? So one thing that I want you to get out of the definitions here is that it's let me say 3 things, okay? First thing is that objects, okay? Keep that in mind, objects. I'm going to come to that later when we start solving problems, okay? Objects. And then also keep in mind that all possible outcome, okay? All possible outcome. And make sure that you follow a systematic approach in doing all your counting, okay? So if your counting problem or your counting task involves just one part counting task, you use a systematic approach, okay? And I'm gonna explain that later in the course, okay? So again, don't get scared. I'm just giving you definitions. I'm just explaining myself here, okay? As time goes on, I think you get better at it. And then because I'm going to be doing examples and you understand what I'm saying. So for example, right, what is an example of one part counting task? It's like, let's say you have a quarter, right? It's just one object, okay? So you just have a quarter, okay? A quarter here, and it's just one object, okay? Just one quarter. It's just one object. So it's one object. A quarter is one object. Well, how many parts does a quarter have? So a quarter has two parts, right? So a quarter is just one object. And that quarter has two parts, okay? But here in this class, I'll call it two elements, okay? So when you hear elements, it's how many parts that object has, okay? And what are those parts? You should know this, right? A quarter has two parts, right? So it has the head and the tail. That's it. So if someone would ask you, if you have a quarter, right? If you have a quarter, which is your object? What are all the possible ways of counting that quarter? You just have to tell that individual. It's just two parts, the head and the tail. That's what one part counting task mean. Let's say, let me also give you another example, right? For a one part counting task, okay? Let's say you have a die, okay? Let's say you have a die. Let's say this is a die, okay? It's one object because it's just one die, okay? One object, okay? How many parts does a die have? Right? So one regular die has 6 parts. But remember I said I'm going to call the parts the elements, okay? So one object, which is a die, okay? So a die has, it's just one die. So it's just one object. And the die has 6 elements, okay? 6 elements. What are the elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So it's one object. List all the possible outcome when you toss a die, right? What are all the possible outcome? All the possible outcome when you toss a die. You can either get a 1, or you can get a 2, or you can get a 3, or you can get a 4, or you can get a 5, or you can get a 6, right? So there's 6 possible outcomes when you toss a die. So the previous example that I gave you is a quarter, right? When you toss a quarter, there are only 2 possible outcomes, a head and a tail, okay? So that's just an example of one part counting task, okay? A 2-part counting task, let's say I give you two quarters and you toss both of them. What are all the possible outcome when you do that? So that's what it's called, a 2-part counting task. Another example with the die, right? Let's say I give you 2 dice and you toss both of them. What are all the possible outcome? So with 2-part tasks, we're going to use a product table, okay? A product table. And again, I'm going to show you examples and I'm going to teach you how to do all this, okay, as we go along. Again, if you have any questions, if I'm speaking too fast, please comment in the comment section and let me know that I'm speaking too fast, and I'll slow down. Okay. So if we have two-part task, if you have 2 quarters and you toss it, what are all the possible outcome of the 2 quarters? With those problems, we're going to use product tables. Okay. If we have 2 dice and we toss them, what are all the possible outcome, right? All the possible outcome for a given task. That's what counting is. With that, we are going to use a product table. What if we have more than 2? What if we have 3 quarters? What if we have 4 quarters? What if we have even 5 quarters? What are we going to do with that, right? You can't even imagine that in your mind, right? Like, how am I going to list all the possible outcomes when I toss 4 quarters, or when I toss 2 dice and a quarter? So that's multiple part counting task, okay? And with those problems, we're going to use a tree diagram, okay? A tree diagram. So for the tree diagram, you can even use it when it's 2 parts, okay? When it's 2 parts, you can either use a product table or a tree diagram. But a tree diagram comes into handy when you have 3 or more, okay? When you have 3 or more part counting task. So this is just definitions, right? And methodologies that we are going to use to count by systematic listing. So I'm going to show you examples, right? And I have my notes here. I know you guys will see me looking at it, right? I have examples that I want to kind of go over with you guys. So I'm going to start with examples, right? So that I'm not just going to teach you theory and methods. I'm also going to show you examples. And again, if you have questions with the examples, don't feel shy. Just comment below, and I will make sure that I reply all your comments. So I'm going to show you an example of a 1-part counting task, okay? And then I'll also show you an example of a 2-part counting task. And I'll show you an example of multiple part counting task, right? Using product table or tree diagram. So this is, again, 1-part tasks. You remember we went over 3 parts, right? 1-part tasks, 2-part tasks, and multiple tasks. So I'm just going to cover a little bit of the 1-part task with examples, okay? So 1-part tasks can often be listed easily, right? Like the examples that I showed you. For the tasks of tossing a fair coin, right, a quarter, the list is head and tail with only 2 possible results, right? So again, right, a quarter is just 1 object with 2 elements, okay? So 1 object, 2 elements. And what are the elements? Head and tail. That's it. 1 object, 2 elements. And then another example is for the listing of rolling, for the tasks of rolling a single fair die, the list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with 6 possibilities, right? Again, because it's 1-part task, it's just 1 object. Okay, 1 object with 6 elements. And what are the elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 possibilities. Another example for 1-part task is this. Let's say there's a club, okay? A club of N. The name of the club is Club N, okay? The name of the club is Club N, and the club consists of 4 people. Mike, Adam, Ted, and Helen, okay? And when you abbreviate it, it becomes MATH, math, okay? So 4 people in the club. And now the question is, in how many ways Can Club N, which is the name of the club, Club N, select a president? In how many ways? Can Club N select a president? So what they want to do is that they want to select a president, one president, okay? So it's one object, okay? One object, which is the president. And how many people do they have in a club? They have 4 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they have 4 elements, okay? Elements. So if they want to choose a president, they can either choose Mike or Adam or Ted or Helen. So the answer to this question is that there are 4 possible ways, right? 4 possible ways to choose a president. And they can either choose Mike, right? Mike, or they can choose Adam, or they can choose Ted, or they can choose Helen, okay? So 4 possible ways to choose a president. So that's what one-part tax is all about. It's, again, right, can often be listed easily. You can just list it easily. You just list it. But just keep in mind that you always know 2 things, okay? How many objects and how many elements. So for a coin, it's 1 object because it's just 1, and 2 elements, head and tail. For a die, it's 1 object, 6 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for this particular example where they want to choose a president, they just want to choose 1 president, so it's just 1 object. And then they have 4 different people in a group, right? So they can either choose Mike, Adam, Ted, or Helen. So that's it for a one-part task. So my next topic, I'm gonna start covering the 2-part tasks. And again, I'm just gonna go over it again, and I'm gonna give you examples so that I'm not just teaching you, just the methods. I'm also giving you examples so we all understand. Again, if you have any questions, please don't forget to comment it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Share it so other students, or not just students, whoever it is wants to increase their knowledge in statistics will find this helpful. And also those who are taking SATs and stuff like that. I think this will be really helpful for you. All the stuff that I'm gonna be covering here. So like it, share this video. If you are new to the channel, if you've not subscribed, subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification button, and I'll do my best to upload at least 1 video a week, or maybe 2 videos a week. And when you click on the notification button, you get notified as soon as I drop a new video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video.